Davante Adams. If you haven't read the Ringer article, I skimmed through it. I'm sure you've seen a lot of the headlines. And let me preface everything by saying this. I love Davante Adams. He's a Fresno State guy. We didn't overlap, but a lot of people that I worked with did. They swear by him. They love him. Everyone I've ever known that has been around the guy, swears by the work ethic, the drive, the desire. His production in games speaks for itself. He's not just a winning player, he's a winning person. You want him in your organization. And I do understand that it's tough, right? For most of our lives, and I say this all the time, we have such a long runway in whatever we do. In sports, it's very short, right? Even if you're an all-time great player, like he's trending toward being, his career might be 15 years, right? 15 years. If he lives till 80, it's really a short period of time in his life, but it's a job that pays more than any other job you'll ever have unless you start some successful business. And it's just a very unique situation for pro athletes. He was in Green Bay for 10 years, one of the most successful organizations in the league. And I get, being from the West Coast, how he might have, he's admitted this. He wanted to change the scenery. He wanted to do something different, and he wanted to get back toward the West Coast. And I respect that. My only pushback is, in football, when you're part of a winner, like when you're as good as Davante is, or any player around the league who's an all-pro level guy consistently, you're going to do two things. You're going to produce, and you're going to be very, very rich. Those things are inevitable, right? And especially money. Like, no matter who Davante played for, he's going to be paid a premium. So I do think when you're factoring in where you're going to play, at wide receiver, you can't really control how good your team's going to be, right? Aaron Rodgers can immediately turn the Jets into a power. He can take them right to the playoffs and in the Super Bowl mix immediately. But if I just added Davante Adams to the Jets instead of Aaron Rodgers, and they still had, let's say they still had Mike White and Zach Wilson, I think we'd all agree maybe a game, but there would not be a dramatic difference. I put Aaron Rodgers and he plays at a high level, which clearly he's capable of, they immediately can win 12 games. So as a wide receiver, and just like most positions, if you're a star left tackle, if you're a star linebacker, you can only dictate so much. So when you decide to leave, which I respect, I've made change of scenery several times. But when you do that, you can't really complain, right? Because you chose this. And the Packers wanted to keep him, and he says, I want to go. And one thing he said a lot through this article was he needed to prove that he was an elite player, that it wasn't because of Aaron Rodgers. And I wonder sometimes with this generation, like historically athletes, especially great ones, always try to find some way to create a chip on their shoulder, create an edge for themselves, create some sort of motivation, which I totally respect. Everyone does. But I do think when he said that out loud, like, I don't know who said that. Like, who has ever said, I don't know if Davante would be good without Aaron Rodgers, especially the last several years. Also, it'd be one thing if it felt like some sort of, I don't want to say battle between the two, but Aaron Rodgers has been pretty outspoken the last several years that the two best players he's ever played with are Charles Woodson, who's a first ballot Hall of Famer, and Davante Adams, who is definitely trending that way. So I actually don't think there's some like what this player would be without the other guy. Hell, we saw it last year. Tyreek Hill immediately turned himself into that. And how good would Patrick Mahomes be without him? And boom, he wins the MVP and wins another Super Bowl. And Tyreek dominates. Sometimes independent from each other, those two guys are awesome, right? Rob Gronkowski would have been sweet wherever. Tom Brady could play with whoever. Like, sometimes great combinations work, right? But if you split the two guys apart, they would still have a lot of success. But he chose to leave the Packers, which was his choice, to go to one of the most dysfunctional organizations we've ever seen. And in the internet age, a franchise that always loses. I mean, they've made the playoffs 2 times in basically 2.5 decades. And their 2 playoff bursts, they've lost both of them. And they were both on the road. One of them, they got destroyed the year when Derek got hurt. 2 years ago against the Bengals, game wasn't really as close as the final score indicated, even though the Raiders had a chance to tie it at the end. But Davante has to justify, and it felt like he was trying to do this in the article, why he made this move. And he kept doubling down. Like, I didn't just make this move, for Derek Carr, which clearly, it's not like he demanded a trade once Derek got sent home and is now on another team. But one thing he couldn't hide, and I don't totally blame him, is like Jimmy Garoppolo is not a great quarterback fit for him. Like, Jimmy Garoppolo is not obviously Aaron Rodgers, but even Derek in terms of explosive balls down the field. Like, I think Davante realizes this is not going to be conducive to my success. Look at Jimmy Garoppolo in his time starting with San Francisco and wide receivers who flourished in terms of numbers. Didn't really happen. I mean, Debo was getting the ball as a running back or on quick screens, not really down the field, right? So I think Davante knows, like, this is not going to be great for me. But, like, you signed up for this. You wanted to leave Aaron Rodgers to go to the Raiders, who lose a lot and also have a coach. It'd be one thing if you went to a team and they had a coach, they had just hired a coach with a lot of success. Like Josh McDaniels as the head coach has been an utter disaster. So I get where, and I don't want to say he's being defensive, but he's trying to justify a move that I think most football fans go, yeah, probably not working out great. But trying to say, like, I'm proud to be an all-pro. Davante, you could be an all-pro playing with the Houston Texans. You're that great of a player. But I think, like, you chose to go to this franchise, it's going to be very, very difficult to win. In that division, especially now that Sean Payton's there, I think most human beings, and this is not like personal, are going to choose the Raiders to finish last. And it's going to be very difficult. Like, I'll be surprised if they don't. And, this is situation's already kind of getting a little weird with them saying, I don't think we quite see eye to eye on the offense and not sure where we're going. Yeah, man. I mean, this is what you signed up for.